The clock on the wall showed 9:47 p.m. when David pushed his cleaning cart through the heavy double doors of Riverside Concert Hall. The evening's performance had ended about 20 minutes ago, and the last few audience members were still chatting in the lobby, their voices echoing off the marble floors. David gave them a polite nod as he passed by, heading toward the main auditorium where the real work waited. He'd been doing this job for 3 years now. 3 years of mopping floors, wiping down seats, and making sure everything sparkled before the next show. It wasn't the career he'd imagined for himself at 18, but life had a funny way of changing your plans. At 38, David had learned to make peace with that. The auditorium was empty now, just rows and rows of red velvet seats stretching back into the shadows. The stage lights were still on, casting a warm glow over the massive grand piano that sat center stage. David always started with the stage. Something about cleaning that space first made the rest of the job feel easier. He climbed the side steps, his work boots making soft thuds on the polished wood. The piano was a beautiful thing, a Steinway that probably cost more than he'd make in 10 years. He pulled out his microfiber cloth and began dusting it carefully, the way the stage manager had taught him. These instruments were sensitive, she'd said. You had to treat them with respect. As David wiped down the glossy black surface, his hand accidentally brushed across the keys. A single note rang out, clear and bright in the empty hall. He froze, glancing around nervously. Nobody was there. Still, he shouldn't be touching the keys. That was the rule. But that one note seemed to hang in the air, calling to him. David looked at the piano bench. His daughter Lily had a piano lesson tomorrow afternoon. She'd been taking lessons for 2 years now, ever since she turned 6. Those lessons cost $80 a month, which was a lot on his salary, but David never complained. Not once. Music was important. He knew that better than anyone. He sat down on the bench just for a second. Just to rest his legs, he told himself. His fingers hovered over the keys. It had been so long. 15 years, maybe more. Back when he was 23 and the world seemed full of possibilities he hadn't imagined would slip away so quickly. David had been good once. Really good. Good enough that his piano teacher had pushed him to apply to music school. Good enough that he'd gotten a scholarship to Juilliard, a full ride that would have changed everything. He could still remember the day the acceptance letter arrived, how his hands had shaken as he read it. 2 weeks later, his girlfriend told him she was pregnant. He'd made his choice quickly. There was no decision to make, really. The baby needed a father, needed stability, needed insurance and diapers and 1,000 other things that a music school student couldn't provide. David had withdrawn his acceptance, gotten a job at a warehouse, and prepared to become a dad. Things didn't work out the way he'd planned. His girlfriend left when Lily was 2, said she wasn't ready for motherhood, wasn't ready for any of it. David's mom had helped him through those early years, watching Lily while he worked double shifts. Now Lily was 8, smart and funny and obsessed with piano just like he'd been at her age. Sitting there on that bench, David let his fingers touch the keys again, just a chord, soft and gentle. Then another. His hands remembered things his mind had tried to forget. They remembered scales and arpeggios, remembered the weight of each key and exactly how much pressure to apply. Before he realized what he was doing, David was playing. Really playing. It was a Chopin piece, one he'd learned in high school and performed at a recital once. His teacher had said he played it beautifully, with feeling. That was what separated good pianists from great ones, she'd told him. Technical skill was important, but feeling was everything. The music filled the empty auditorium, each note carrying something David couldn't put into words. All the dreams he'd set aside. All the nights he'd worked late so Lily could have new shoes or a class field trip. All the times he'd walked past a piano in a mall or a church and felt his fingers itch to play. It was all there in the music, pouring out of him like something that had been locked away too long. David closed his eyes, letting muscle memory take over. This was the only place he felt truly himself anymore. Not David the janitor, not David the struggling single dad, but just David. The person he'd been before life got complicated. He played for 5 minutes, maybe 10. Time seemed to stop when he was at the piano. It always had. When he finally opened his eyes and his hand stilled on the keys, David felt lighter somehow, clearer, like he'd said something important that needed to be said. He stood up quickly, suddenly embarrassed even though no one was there to see him. This was silly. He was 38 years old with a mop and a bucket, playing pretend on a piano that wasn't his. He had work to finish. His mom was watching Lily, and he needed to get home at a reasonable hour for once. David grabbed his cleaning cloth and got back to work, dusting the rest of the piano properly this time. But something felt different now. The auditorium didn't feel quite so empty. The work didn't feel quite so heavy. For just a few minutes, he'd remembered what it felt like to be the person he'd once dreamed of becoming. What David didn't know as he finished cleaning the stage and moved on to the aisles was that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't imagine, because while he'd been playing with his eyes closed, lost in the music, 3 people had been standing in the lobby doorway. 3 people who knew exactly what they'd just heard. 3 people who were already making a plan that would turn David's ordinary Friday night into something extraordinary. But that discovery was still a few minutes away. For now, David just pushed his cart down the aisle, humming quietly to himself, the melody from the Chopin piece still dancing in his head. David was halfway down aisle 7, spraying cleaner on the armrests when he heard footsteps on the stage behind him. His heart jumped. He spun around, nearly dropping the spray bottle. 3 people stood near the piano, looking right at him. 2 women and a man, all dressed like they'd just come from somewhere fancy. The older woman wore a dark blue dress that probably cost more than his rent. The man had on a suit with a tie that looked like real silk. The younger woman wore glasses and held a leather notebook against her chest. David's mind raced. Had they seen him playing? Oh no, no. He wasn't supposed to touch the piano. That was probably rule number 1 for janitors at a concert hall. He could lose his job. What would he tell Lily? How would he pay for her piano lessons if he lost this job? I'm really sorry, David said quickly, setting down his spray bottle and walking toward the stage. His voice came out shaky. I shouldn't have been playing. I was just dusting and I sat down for a second and I know I'm not supposed to touch it and it won't happen again, I promise. The older woman held up her hand, but she wasn't frowning. She was almost smiling. Please stop apologizing, she said. Her voice was kind but firm the way a teacher might sound. I'm Catherine Lee. I'm a concert pianist and these are my colleagues, Robert Chen and Dr. Patricia Williams. We're judges for tomorrow's piano competition. David felt his stomach drop even further. Judges, great. He'd probably interrupted their work or something. I really am sorry for any disruption, he said. I'll just finish up and get out of your way. Who taught you to play like that? Catherine asked. She took a step closer and David noticed her eyes. They were intense, focused completely on him like he was the only person in the world right then. David blinked. I'm sorry, what? You're playing, the man Robert said. He had a slight accent, Chinese maybe. We heard you from the lobby. Who was your teacher? David looked between the 3 of them, trying to figure out if this was some kind of test. I had a teacher in high school, Mrs. Patterson. She taught piano out of her house. But that was a long time ago. How long ago? Dr. Williams asked. She opened her notebook, pen ready like she was about to write something important. About 20 years, David admitted. I played through high school, took it pretty seriously for a while. Then life happened and I stopped. Catherine walked closer to the stage edge. That was Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. You played it from memory? David nodded slowly. Yeah, I learned it when I was 17. I guess I just never forgot it. You didn't just remember the notes, Catherine said. And now there was something in her voice that David couldn't quite identify. Excitement, maybe? You played with remarkable emotional depth. The phrasing, the dynamics, the way you shaped each phrase, it was extraordinary. That doesn't come from just remembering notes. David felt his face getting hot. He wasn't used to compliments, especially not about his piano playing. That part of his life was private, something he did alone when no one was watching. I just play for fun sometimes, he said. Whenever I find an empty piano. Churches, community centers, places like that. Why did you stop? Dr. Williams asked. After high school, why did you give it up? David hesitated. This wasn't something he talked about with strangers. This wasn't something he talked about with anyone, really. But these 3 people were looking at him with genuine interest, like his answer actually mattered to them. I got accepted to Juilliard, he said finally. The words felt strange coming out of his mouth. He hadn't said that out loud in years. Full scholarship. But my girlfriend got pregnant and I had a daughter instead. Someone had to work, had to have health insurance, had to pay bills. Music school didn't fit into that picture. The three judges were quiet for a moment. Catherine's expression softened. "How old is your daughter now?" 8, David said, and he couldn't help smiling when he thought about Lily. "She's taking piano lessons. She's got a lesson tomorrow, actually. That's why I work nights, so I can be there for her during the day." "Does she know you play?" Robert asked. David shook his head. "Not really. She knows I took lessons as a kid, but I don't play in front of her much. Her lessons are her thing, you know. I don't want to overshadow that or make her feel like she has to be as serious about it as I was. I just want her to enjoy it." Catherine exchanged glances with the other two judges. Something passed between them, some unspoken conversation. Then Catherine pulled out her phone. "I recorded part of your performance," she said. "I hope you don't mind. I wanted to make sure I hadn't imagined what I heard." David's eyes widened. "You recorded me?" "Just the last 2 minutes," Catherine said. "Listen." She tapped her phone and suddenly David heard himself playing. It sounded different on the recording, tinny and small compared to the real thing, but the music was still there. Still beautiful, if he was being honest with himself. When the recording ended, Dr. Williams spoke up. "The competition tomorrow has different categories. There's the main category for students and professionals under 35. But there's also an open category for amateur pianists of any age. Anyone can enter, and the registration fee is waived for community members." David wasn't sure where this was going. "Okay. I want you to compete," Catherine said simply. David laughed. He couldn't help it. The idea was absurd. "Me? Compete in a piano competition? I'm a janitor. I clean this place. I can't compete against real pianists." "You are a real pianist," Robert said. His voice was serious, no hint of joking. "We just heard you. What you did up there was real. More real than half the performances we'll hear tomorrow." "I don't even have anything prepared," David protested. "I just played something I remembered from high school." "I can't just show up and compete." "Why not?" Catherine asked. "You know the piece. You clearly don't need more practice. And the open category is designed exactly for people like you. People with talent who never got the chance to pursue it professionally." David felt like the room was spinning a little. This had to be a dream. Maybe he'd fallen asleep during his break and this whole thing was just his brain playing tricks on him. "I have to work tomorrow night," he said weakly. "The competition starts at 2 in the afternoon," Dr. Williams said. "Open category performs at 4. You'd be done by 6 at the latest." "I don't have anything to wear," David tried again. "You can't compete in a piano competition wearing jeans and work boots." "That's solvable," Catherine said. She had an answer for everything, David was realizing. "The question isn't whether you have the right clothes. The question is whether you're brave enough to stop hiding your gift." That hit David harder than he expected. Hiding his gift. Was that what he'd been doing all these years? He'd told himself he was being practical, being responsible, being a good father. But maybe part of him had been hiding too. Hiding from the pain of what he'd given up. Hiding from the fear that maybe he wasn't as good as he'd once thought he was. "I don't know," David said honestly. "This is crazy." "The best things usually are," Catherine said. She pulled a business card from her purse and held it out to him. "Think about it tonight. If you decide to do it, call me in the morning. We'll help you register. We'll make sure you have everything you need." David took the card with shaking hands. Catherine Lee, concert pianist. There was a phone number and an email address. "One more thing," Robert said as the three of them started to walk toward the lobby. "Don't practice too much tonight. You already know the piece. Trust yourself." Then they were gone, leaving David alone in the empty auditorium with a business card, a head full of confusion, and a decision that could change everything. David didn't finish cleaning the auditorium properly that night. His mind was somewhere else entirely as he pushed his cart through the aisles, missing spots he'd normally catch. By the time he clocked out at midnight, he'd made his decision at least 15 times and changed it 15 more. The drive home was quiet. David kept the radio off, just listening to the hum of his old Toyota's engine and the sound of his own thoughts. A piano competition. Him. After 15 years of playing alone in empty rooms, suddenly 3 professional musicians wanted him on a stage in front of an audience. It was ridiculous. It was terrifying. It was maybe the most exciting thing that had happened to him in a decade. When David got home, his mom was asleep on the couch with the TV playing softly. She did this every night he worked late, refusing to go home until he was back safely. David gently shook her shoulder. "Hey Mom, I'm home." His mom, Helen, opened her eyes and stretched. She was 63 but still sharp as ever. "How was work, honey?" David sat down on the coffee table across from her. He pulled Catherine's business card from his pocket and just stared at it for a moment. Something weird happened tonight. He told her everything. The piano, the judges, the invitation to compete. His mom listened without interrupting, the way she always did. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "What are you afraid of?" she asked finally. David laughed, but it came out shaky. "What am I not afraid of?" "I'm afraid I'll embarrass myself. I'm afraid I'm not as good as I used to be. I'm afraid people will wonder what a janitor is doing on stage with real musicians. I'm afraid—" "You're afraid you might actually be good," his mom said, cutting him off gently. "You're afraid that if you try and succeed, you'll have to face everything you gave up. And if you try and fail, you'll lose even the memory of what you could have been." David felt his throat get tight. His mom had always been able to see right through him. "Maybe," he admitted. "Baby, I didn't raise you to hide," Helen said. She reached out and squeezed his hand. "You made the choice you had to make 15 years ago. You chose your daughter, and that was the right choice. But Lily's 8 years old now. She's not a baby anymore, and you playing piano doesn't take anything away from her. If anything, it shows her that dreams don't have to die just because life gets hard." "What if I mess up?" David asked. His voice came out smaller than he intended. "Then you mess up," his mom said with a shrug. "And you come home and we eat ice cream and life goes on. But at least you tried. At least you didn't spend the rest of your life wondering what if." David looked at the business card again. Catherine Lee's number stared back at him. "It's almost 1 in the morning. I can't call her now." "Then call her first thing in the morning," his mom said. She stood up and grabbed her purse. "I'll come by early tomorrow. You call that woman, and then you go play that piano like I know you can. Now get some sleep." After his mom left, David checked on Lily. She was sprawled across her bed, one arm hanging off the side. Her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. She looked peaceful. Perfect. She was the reason for everything he did, every choice he made. He thought about what his mom had said, about showing Lily that dreams don't have to die, about being brave enough to try. David barely slept that night. At 6 in the morning, he was already awake, staring at his ceiling and running through the Chopin piece in his mind. His fingers twitched against the bedsheets, playing the notes on an invisible keyboard. At 8 o'clock, after getting Lily breakfast and before his mom arrived, David took a deep breath and dialed Catherine's number. She answered on the second ring. "This is Catherine." "Hi, this is David, from last night. The janitor who was playing the piano." "David, I was hoping you'd call." She sounded genuinely happy, which made David relax a little. "I've been thinking about what you said," David started, "and I'm probably crazy, but I want to do it. I want to compete." "That's wonderful," Catherine said. "Okay, here's what we need to do. Can you meet me at the hall at noon? We'll get you registered, and I have someone who can help with clothing." "About that," David said. "I really don't have money for—" "Already handled," Catherine interrupted. "I called a friend who owns a menswear shop. He heard your story and he's donating a suit. All you need to do is show up and let him fit you. Consider it an investment in the arts." David felt overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't seem like enough." "Thank me by playing your heart out this afternoon," Catherine said. "Oh, and David? Bring your daughter if you want. I'd love to meet her." After hanging up, David sat for a moment just processing everything. This was really happening. In less than 8 hours, he'd be on stage playing piano in front of hundreds of people. His mom arrived at 9. When he told her he'd made the call, she whooped so loud that Lily came running from her room. "What's going on?" Lily asked, her eyes wide. David knelt down to her level. "Hey, sweetie, how would you like to come watch Daddy play piano today? There's a competition at the concert hall where I work." Lily's face lit up. "You're in a piano competition?"
"Really?"
"Really," David said. "It's kind of a last-minute thing, but yeah. I'm going to play on the big stage. Can Grandma come too?" Lily asked, already bouncing with excitement. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," Helen said. The morning passed in a blur. David showered, tried to eat but couldn't get much down, and changed clothes 3 times before his mom told him to stop being ridiculous. At 11, they drove to the hall. Catherine was waiting outside with a tall man carrying a garment bag. "David, this is Thomas. He's going to make sure you look the part." Thomas had David try on the suit in the hall's dressing room. It was simple but elegant, black with a crisp white shirt. Thomas made a few quick adjustments with pins, nodding approvingly. "You wear it well," Thomas said. "Good luck today." While Thomas worked, Catherine took Lily and Helen on a tour of the backstage area. David could hear Lily's excited voice echoing down the hallway, asking a million questions about everything. It made him smile despite his nerves. By 1 o'clock, people started arriving for the competition. David watched from the wings as the auditorium filled up. There were hundreds of them, maybe close to 1,000. Parents with cameras, music students, elderly couples, teenagers in formal wear waiting to perform. His hands started sweating. "You okay?" Catherine appeared beside him. She'd changed into a formal gown, looking every bit the professional pianist she was. "I'm terrified," David admitted. "What if I freeze up there? What if my hands shake so bad I can't play?" "Then you take a breath and start again," Catherine said simply. "But you won't freeze. You know why? Because you're not playing for the judges or the audience. You're playing for that little girl sitting in the front row who thinks her dad can do anything. You're playing for yourself, for the 23-year-old who gave up his dream so she could exist. This is your moment, David. Don't waste it being afraid." The competition began at 2. David sat backstage listening to performance after performance. Some were technically perfect but felt cold. Others had passion but lacked precision. Each one made his stomach twist tighter. At 3:45, a stage manager found him. "You're up in 15 minutes. Open category amateur division." David nodded, not trusting his voice. He walked to the edge of the stage curtain and peeked out. There, in the front row, sat Lily next to his mom. Lily was wearing her favorite blue dress, the one she saved for special occasions. She was leaning forward in her seat, watching the current performer with complete focus. This was it. In 15 minutes, David would walk onto that stage and either prove to himself that he still had it, or learn that some dreams really do die when you stop chasing them. Either way, he was about to find out. The stage manager touched David's shoulder. "You're next. They'll call your name in about 2 minutes." David's mouth went dry. He could hear the current performer finishing up, something classical and complicated that sounded flawless. The audience clapped politely when it ended. Then there was the sound of footsteps, a chair scraping, silence. "Next we have David Chen, performing in the open amateur category." The announcer's voice echoed through the hall. "He'll be playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major." David's legs felt like jelly as he walked onto the stage. The lights were so bright he couldn't see much past the first few rows, which was probably a blessing. He could make out Lily, though, sitting on the edge of her seat, waving at him with both hands. His mom sat beside her, giving him a subtle thumbs up. The walk to the piano felt like it took forever. David was hyper-aware of everything: the sound of his shoes on the stage floor, the rustling of programs as people settled in their seats, the weight of the borrowed suit on his shoulders. His heart hammering so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. He sat down on the bench and adjusted it slightly. The piano loomed in front of him, massive and intimidating. This wasn't like playing alone at night with no one watching. This was real. This was hundreds of people waiting to hear what he could do. David's hands hovered over the keys. They were shaking. He tried to remember what his old teacher, Mrs. Patterson, used to tell him. "When you're nervous, just breathe. Find the first note in your mind before you touch the keys." He closed his eyes and took a slow breath. Then another. The auditorium was so quiet he could hear someone cough in the back row. He thought about why he was here. Not for the judges. Not to prove anything to strangers. He was here because for 15 years he'd hidden this part of himself. And maybe it was time to stop hiding. David opened his eyes and let his hands fall to the keys. The first notes of the Chopin came out soft and gentle, like a whisper. His hands were still shaking a little, but the moment he started playing, something shifted. The nervousness didn't disappear completely, but it transformed into something else. Energy, focus, purpose. The Nocturne was a piece about night, about reflection, about things felt deeply but said quietly. David had played it 100 times alone, but never like this. Every note seemed to carry more weight now. Every pause felt significant. He thought about all the nights he'd worked late so Lily could have what she needed. All the dreams he'd folded up and put away. All the moments he'd walked past a piano and felt that ache of wanting. It was all there in the music. As David played, the shaking in his hands stopped. He forgot about the audience. He forgot about the judges. He even forgot about being nervous. There was just the music and the story it told. His fingers knew exactly where to go, exactly how much pressure to apply, exactly when to hold back and when to let the emotion pour through. In the front row, Lily had stopped bouncing. She sat completely still, watching her father with an expression that was part awe, part confusion. She'd never seen him like this before. Never knew he could do this. Her grandmother had tears running down her cheeks, but she was smiling. Scattered throughout the audience, people were having their own reactions. A teenage boy who'd performed earlier stopped scrolling on his phone and actually watched. An elderly woman closed her eyes and swayed slightly to the music. A music teacher leaned over and whispered to her husband, "Listen to his phrasing. That's not technique, that's soul." At the judges' table, Catherine had goosebumps on her arms. She'd heard the Chopin Nocturne performed by masters, by students, by amateurs and professionals from around the world. But there was something about David's interpretation that hit differently. It wasn't the most technically perfect performance she'd ever heard. There were tiny imperfections, little moments where you could tell he was out of practice, but the emotion was raw and real in a way that perfect performances often weren't. Robert leaned over to her. "You were right about him," he whispered. David moved through the middle section of the piece where the melody climbs and becomes more urgent. His whole body moved with the music now, leaning into the crescendos, pulling back for the quiet moments. This was what he'd been missing for 15 years. Not just the playing, but the feeling of expressing something that couldn't be said with words. As he approached the final section, David felt something break open inside his chest. It wasn't sadness exactly, and it wasn't joy either. It was more like release. Like finally admitting to himself that this mattered. That he was allowed to want this. To be good at this. To take up space as someone who made music and not just someone who cleaned up after other people made music. The last notes fell soft and gentle, just like the beginning. David held his hands on the keys for a moment after the final chord, letting it ring out and fade naturally into silence. Then he lifted his hands and the spell broke. For a second, maybe two, the auditorium was completely silent. David's heart sank. Had he messed up? Had it been as terrible as he feared? He started to stand, ready to hurry off stage and disappear. Then the applause started. It wasn't polite clapping like the other performers had gotten. It was loud, immediate, and it kept growing. People were standing up. First a few in the front rows, then more, then whole sections. A standing ovation for him. For David, the janitor who'd spent 15 years pushing a mop and wondering what might have been. Lily was jumping up and down, clapping so hard her hands had to hurt. His mom was openly crying now, making no attempt to hide it. Throughout the audience, people were on their feet, some wiping their eyes, others just clapping with genuine enthusiasm. David stood there in shock. He didn't know what to do. Should he bow, wave? He settled for an awkward half-bow, his face burning with a mixture of embarrassment and something that felt dangerously close to pride. As he walked off stage, his legs felt wobbly again, but for a different reason. The stage manager, a woman who'd worked there for 20 years and had seen thousands of performances, caught his arm. "That was beautiful," she said simply. "Really beautiful." David made it to the wings before Lily found him. She crashed into him with a hug that nearly knocked him over. "Dad, you were amazing. I didn't know you could play like that. Why didn't you tell me?" David knelt down and hugged her properly. "I guess I forgot I could," he said honestly. "But I'm glad you got to see it." His mom was right behind Lily, and she pulled David into a hug the moment Lily released him. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. So proud." Catherine appeared a moment later. Her professional composure had cracked slightly, and she was smiling wider than David had seen yet. "The judges need about 20 minutes to deliberate on the open category," she said. "But between you and me, you just gave one of the most moving performances I've heard in years." "I made some mistakes," David said automatically. "I was shaky at the beginning, and there were a couple places where—" "Stop," Catherine said firmly. "Music isn't about perfection. It's about communication. It's about making people feel something. And you just made 1,000 people feel something real. That's what matters." David didn't know what to say to that. He just nodded, still trying to process what had just happened. 20 minutes ago, he'd been terrified. Now he felt like he was floating. "Come on," his mom said. "Let's get you some water. You look like you might pass out." As they walked toward the green room, David could still hear the murmur of the audience beyond the curtain. He caught pieces of conversations. Who was that guy? Did you see his daughter's reaction? I want to hear him play again. Whatever happened next, whatever the judges decided, David knew something had changed. He'd stepped onto that stage as one person and walked off as someone slightly different, someone who'd remembered, even just for a few minutes, who he used to be and who he still could be. The waiting was about to begin. The green room backstage was small and cramped, filled with other performers waiting for results. David sat on a folding chair with Lily on his lap, her head resting against his chest. His mom had gone to get them all some coffee and juice from the lobby. His hands were still trembling slightly, but now it was from adrenaline rather than fear. "Dad?" Lily said quietly. "Yes, sweetie? Why did you stop playing piano? If you're that good, why did you quit?" David was quiet for a moment, trying to find words an 8-year-old would understand. "Sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices," he said finally. "When you were born, I had to choose between following my dreams and making sure you had everything you needed. And choosing you was the easiest decision I ever made." Lily looked up at him with those big brown eyes that always melted his heart. "But you could have done both, right?"
You could have played piano and been my dad?
"Maybe," David admitted. "Or maybe I just thought I couldn't. Sometimes we tell ourselves stories about what's possible and what isn't. And we believe those stories so much they become true." Before Lily could respond, the door opened and his mom returned with drinks. Right behind her was Catherine, looking slightly flushed. "David, can I talk to you for a second?" Catherine asked. David gently moved Lily to his mom's lap and followed Catherine into the hallway. His heart was racing again. The judges had made their decision. This was it. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this before the official announcement," Catherine said, speaking quickly. "But you won. First place in the open amateur category. Unanimous decision." David felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "I won?" "You didn't just win," Catherine continued. "During deliberation, something unusual happened. Robert recorded part of your performance on his phone and posted it to his social media. He has about 50,000 followers, mostly music teachers and classical music fans. David, it's already been shared over 1,000 times. People are asking who you are, where you studied, when your next performance is." David leaned against the wall trying to process this information. "I don't understand. It's only been 20 minutes. "That's how the internet works," Catherine said with a slight laugh. "But listen, there's more. After the award ceremony, several people want to talk to you. There's a music school here in the city that offers adult programs, and the director is in the audience. She wants to discuss scholarship opportunities. There's also a community concert series organizer who books local musicians for paid performances. And honestly, I think once that video spreads more, you're going to get a lot more attention." David's head was spinning. "I have a job. I have Lily. I can't just suddenly become a concert pianist." "I'm not suggesting you quit your job tomorrow," Catherine said gently. "But David, you have a gift. A real gift. And now the world knows it. What you do with that is up to you. But don't dismiss it because it seems impossible. 24 hours ago, competing in this competition seemed impossible. And look what happened." They walked back to the green room together. David's mom took one look at his face and knew something big had happened. Lily was too busy coloring in a program book someone had given her to notice. 15 minutes later, everyone was called back to the auditorium for the awards ceremony. David sat with his mom and Lily in the performer section while they announced the winners in various categories. Each winner got a trophy and a small scholarship check. The amounts weren't huge, but they were meaningful. Finally, the announcer reached the open amateur category. "This year's winner gave us a performance that reminded us why we love music. Playing with technical skill and profound emotional depth, first place goes to David Chen." The applause was just as loud as it had been after his performance. David walked on stage in a daze, shook hands with the judges, and accepted a trophy that felt surprisingly heavy. There was a check, too, for $500. That would cover 3 months of Lily's piano lessons. But more than the trophy or the money, it was the look on Lily's face that mattered. She was standing on her chair clapping, completely unself-conscious, just proud of her dad. That image would stay with David forever. After the ceremony, people swarmed him. The music school director, Dr. Rebecca Foster, was first. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Mr. Chen, I run the adult continuing education program at Westside Music Conservatory. We offer evening and weekend classes for adult learners who want to pursue music seriously. Based on what I heard today, I'd like to offer you a full scholarship for our certificate program. It's a 2-year course and classes are designed around working adults' schedules. David's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Dr. Foster smiled and handed him her card. Think about it. Call me when you're ready. Next came Vincent Martinez, who organized a monthly concert series at a local theater. We pay performers $300 per concert, he explained. Nothing fancy, just intimate shows for music lovers. I'd love to book you for our series. Could be once a month, could be once every few months, whatever works with your schedule. More people followed. A piano teacher who wanted to refer advanced students to him for inspiration. A local newspaper reporter who wanted to write a story. A woman whose son had played in the competition who said David's performance had moved her to tears. Through it all, David kept looking over at Lily and his mom. They were watching everything with amazement. His mom caught his eye at one point and mouthed, "I told you so." When things finally calmed down and people started leaving, Catherine approached one more time. "Check your phone," she said with a mysterious smile. David pulled out his phone. It had been on silent during the competition. Now it showed 37 missed calls and over 100 text messages. His social media apps had notifications in the hundreds. He opened one and found himself watching his own performance from several different angles. People in the audience had recorded it. The comments were overwhelming. "This made me cry. Who is this man? This is what real music sounds like. I've listened to this 5 times already. The way he plays, you can tell he's lived a life." One comment in particular caught his eye. It was from a verified account, a famous concert pianist David had admired for years. "This is why I became a musician. To feel what this man made me feel today. Bravo." David looked up at Catherine, his eyes wet. "This is insane. This is your life now," Catherine said. "If you want it to be. Nobody's going to force you to do anything. You can go back to work Monday night, keep playing piano alone, and that's fine. Or you can take some of these opportunities. You can study music again. You can perform. You can show your daughter that it's never too late to become who you were meant to be." That night, after they got home, after Lily had gone to bed still talking excitedly about my dad, the piano player, David sat at the kitchen table with his mom. The trophy sat between them, catching the light. "What are you going to do?" his mom asked. David thought about it. Really thought about it. About Dr. Foster's scholarship offer. About Vincent's concert series. About the video that was still spreading across the internet, being shared by music lovers around the world. About Lily's face when she watched him play. "I'm going to call Dr. Foster on Monday," he said finally. "And I'm going to talk to my boss about maybe switching to part-time. And I'm going to see where this goes." "Good," his mom said simply. She stood up and kissed his forehead like she used to when he was little. "I'm proud of you, baby. Not because you won a competition. I'm proud because you were brave enough to try." After his mom left, David went to check on Lily one more time. She was fast asleep, but she'd put his trophy on her nightstand where she could see it from her bed. Next to it was a drawing she'd made. A stick figure sitting at a piano with music notes floating all around, and big letters at the top that said, "My Dad the Best."